drive for a 60-minute game. After all the miles we've traveled, we're almost there. After all the hours we've worked, one more can make us legends. After all
Good morning and welcome to the Last Word Team MBS College Football Recap Show. Of course, I am one of your hosts, Joe Cardoza, joined as always on this fine Sunday morning by Jeff Barnes and all the way from up north, our five-star recruit who's finally getting some playing time, Mr. Greg Rector. Gentlemen, good morning. How are we doing this today?
Doing good, man. Coffee works wonders.
Yep. Coffee. That.
Oh, you're talking to the coffee king, so I feel you 100%. I've even moved on from the iced coffee, and I've gotten hot. So you know it's bad when I go from iced coffee to hot coffee.
There you go.
I can only do hot, man.
Yeah.
Iced coffee just don't hit the same.
No, that iced coffee just does nothing for me at all.
I think I go for the ice for the sugar, but you're right. The hot coffee definitely gets your eyes open and gets your blood pumping, just like the college football did for us yesterday. So let's just jump right into the college football scoreboard and kind of go over some of the scores from yesterday. So we saw that Virginia pull off a huge upset, taking out UNC. We saw Ole Miss, a little bit of a struggle in the first half of that game, but they ended up beating Auburn 28-21. No complaints from me. Michigan with a 49 victory over the Spartans. I don't know if that was sign stealing or better talent, but either way, it's a dub for the Maize and Blue. We'll take it. Minnesota with a nail biter over top of Iowa 12-10. You saw LSU respectfully beat Army 62-0. This game was a lot closer than I think it should have been. Arizona State, who's been giving a lot of teams fits. They ended up losing to Washington on the road, though, 15-7. Wake Forest defeats Pitt 21-17. Mizzou quietly having a really good season, 34-12 over South Carolina. And then I thought it was going to be upset. I kept on paying attention to this score. I thought Houston could pull it off, but in the end, a bad play call, which will be something we'll talk about a lot. A bad play call from the OC saw them lose to Texas 31-24. So, Jeff, some comments and some thoughts on yesterday's overall college football scene.
Yeah, man. Some exciting football games. I must admit, if you tuned into one game, you had no problem sticking with it because most of these games are very entertaining. Unless you were watching the LSU Army game. LSU finally gets the blowout they were looking for, right? But overall, some very good college football, a lot of nail biters, a lot of games that a lot of people didn't think were going to be competitive were very competitive. Kudos to a lot of schools out there. USF, evening their record at 500. A lot of people thought they wouldn't be competitive. Here they are on the verge of making a bowl. Here's UCF. You know, everybody said they were going to struggle going into the Big 12. So far, they look right at home. They're competing with everybody. Almost pulled off the major upset yesterday in Norman, of all places. So overall, I think we're seeing a very competitive college football landscape right now. Very competitive for the overall playoff. You know, we're looking at teams like North Carolina going down. Another one-loss team now. All right, so we're going to have a glutton, a whole bunch of gridlock going into that playoff towards the end of the season. Everybody trying to throw their hat in the ring with one loss, in some cases even two.
So before we jump into our first featured game, what are some of your thoughts after yesterday's action, Greg?
The University of Houston was absolutely robbed by the officiating crew because before that play that you're discussing, they had a first down. Bottom line, the kid was at the 9-yard line. That's a first down, and they got the left-footed call, as it's referred to as, right? It was just horrible. Quinn Ewers is also injured. So Texas, your hopes are done. Bottom line, North Carolina losing was just shocking to me because Virginia was 1-5. Okay, where did Mac Brown's defense go to last night? I have no idea, but it wasn't the same defense that I've seen all year play for the Tar Heels.
Well, let's just jump right into our featured game of the week. One of our many featured games of the week. Let you go ahead and lead the charge on that, Jeff, and let's talk a little bit of Penn State and Ohio State.
Well, Ryan Day, right? Everybody loves to talk about Ryan Day and Ohio State, and we've always talked about how high-flying their offense has been. This year, a lot more efficient than high-flying, nevertheless, still undefeated, right? Taking out Penn State. Didn't we just say last week, and remember we were talking about this matchup, a lot of people were saying this is the upset that the Nittany Lions were bound to make happen. And I said, they just don't seem to beat the Ohio States and the Michigans. They can beat everybody else in the Big Ten, or whatever number it's going to be with all the teams coming into it. But nevertheless, when it comes to Ohio State, when it comes to Michigan, they just don't seem to match up totally against these two teams. This is the most vulnerable Ohio State team they've seen in a long time, and they still couldn't get the job done. So they're a very good team. They can compete with anybody in the country except Ohio State and Michigan. They just can't compete with those two teams. So,
Mike Yurkich, the Penn State offensive coordinator, you need to be fired. You need to be history. Drew Aller is not a bad quarterback. Yes, he's a kid. He's 6'5". He's a 5-star quarterback. When you do not put receivers in the right places for this kid to find, you're destroying him, because the Ohio State defense is good. And to not put those receivers in better spots for him all day long was just horrifying. And even when they did get the fumble that went for a touchdown, what did the guy on defense do? He held Marvin Harrison for no reason. And it was highly frustrating for me because as our lovely friend Courtney is also a Penn State fan, I really thought this was the year that Penn State was going to beat one of them.
Yeah, talk about taking it on the chin. I think she took a sabbatical for the rest of the day when that game went final. She was a hard person to find when that game went final. And this just adds on to the heat on James Franklin as not being able to take care of the big one and win the big game. And I mean, as much as I hate to say it, you look at his record and what he's done against these two big teams when it comes to the Big Ten, and we talk about starts at Ohio State and Michigan, his record is not that good. And I was shocked. Not since 2011 has Penn State won in the horseshoe. That was a little nugget of a fact. I didn't even know that was a thing. I figured Penn State would have won one somewhere around there. But I mean, Greg's right though. If there was ever a time to beat the Buckeyes, it was this season. And on paper, unfortunately, games I played on paper, you thought that Penn State would have had this with the defensive numbers they came in with, 5-star quarterback, 2 great running backs. So they didn't even use. I look at the stats a lot for Penn State. Just a pretty bad performance for the Nittany Lions.
Yeah, and it was talked about with Harbaugh for many years, right? He can't beat Ohio State. He can't beat Ohio State. Well, James Franklin has 2 monsters he seems to can't get over, right? Maybe someday he does. It's just not today. And it's going to turn around. He's going to run into Michigan, and they're going to lose to Michigan because Michigan's way more explosive than Ohio State. So it's a very good team. It's a very good program. He has it on the up and up. However, this is another program. We talked about the Notre Dames. You talked about all the classic programs who are used to competing for national titles. And he can't even compete for the conference title right now. So there's a lot of very unhappy boosters in Happy Valley right now. So you better believe he's feeling some heat. But the question is, do you start to look at replacing a guy who's a consistent winner? I don't believe in doing that. I don't believe in replacing a guy who every year wins 8, 9, 10 games a year. That is just a bad look that you're going to replace somebody like that. And usually what happens is when you do that, you replace him and the next guy can't even get 6 wins. So to me, I keep the thing in place, and I'm hoping that we can continue to get this better and get to the point where we're finally able to overcome those demons in Ohio State and Michigan. But if that's the least you got to worry about is beating just those two, if you're owning the rest of the conference, if you're owning the rest of the country, because he's beaten teams like Utah, he's beaten teams like USC. He just can't seem to beat the monsters in his own conference. Yeah. And if he could finally conquer those demons, then you can finally sit there and say, okay, now we're back. But right now, you're a very competitive program. You're a very respectable program, the way you consistently win. And I don't see any reason to make a change. just for the sake of change.
Yeah, and I also like to add too, in this day and age of social media and what can you do for me to get me to the next level, he has a pretty solid track record of getting guys who play on Sundays as well. So I think that's a big feather. That's a big feather. Saquon Barkley, Joey Porter Jr. I mean, it's not a slouch program by any means. Yeah, for sure.
You go down the list of Penn State guys, they're all around. Connor McGovern. You know, we every year in the draft, there's at least 4 or 5 Penn State guys on the board somewhere. So he's putting out talent. He's winning games. He's doing everything that you want. He's keeping it clean. There's no saying Dusty's hanging around that program.
Oh, wow.
So right now, you got to love the fact that he is keeping them competitive. He's keeping the program clean. You're not hearing of any kind of, controversy coming out of there. The only thing you have is you just can't beat the 2 big monsters in your conference. And it's very hard to do because, honestly, those 2 teams are undefeated for a reason, right? Michigan's undefeated. They haven't had a close game yet. You know, Ohio State's had some barn burners against some very tough programs, and they're still standing. So got to give those 2 guys credit, okay? Michigan, Ohio State, and right there in the third in the pecking order is Penn State. There's nothing to be ashamed of there. At some point, they're going to get over that mountain, hopefully, with James Franklin.
Yeah. Hopefully some Penn State alumni were able to hear that speech, Jeff, and make them feel a little bit better on this Sunday mornings. I know a lot of them are down and down bad. Moving on to our second featured game, we had UCF take on Oklahoma, and we saw the Sooners pull out that win 31-29. What are our thoughts on that, Mr. Greg?
Well, Gus Malzahn, he grounded and pounded his way as per usual. But the Sooners have a Big 12 offense, and that Big 12 offense lit up late in the game. And when UCF had the chance at the end, Malzahn got cute, and they could have had this game going to overtime, but he got cute, and Oklahoma just shut it down.
What were your takeaways from this game, Jeff?
Yeah, it's we talked about this team. Everybody said they were going to struggle. Well, they're not struggling right now. UCF came in and very competitive, almost took this game away from Norman. Unfortunately, they just don't score enough touchdowns. Field goals are nice, but they're not touchdowns. You got to score touchdowns in the Big 12. The good thing for them is they won't have this matchup much longer, right? So they're going to see many of the other schools, but you still got to score with the Oklahoma States and everybody else you're going to face, the TCUs, the Baylors, those schools, the track teams. You better be able to keep up on the scoreboard. But I think what you're seeing is Gus Malzahn is Gus Malzahn. He is that ideal physical offense. We brutally pound you on the ground. We're going to throw and we're going to put the ball in the air. John Reese Plumlee has some solid numbers. But overall, it came down to that running game was the key. And I think what you're seeing is that's great, but it's not good enough to beat the Oklahomas. But you took them to the wire. You had them on the ropes. Nothing wrong with that. It's a moral victory. They don't go in a win column. But as for a program that's transitioning to a bigger conference, there's something to take into next year. Oklahoma, on the other hand, you've got to worry a little bit. It's just like, okay, this opponent we think we should have dominated. We didn't dominate. We snuck by. And at the end, we're going to get to this conference title game, most likely undefeated, unless they have another stumble. You got to worry about a letdown in the conference title game or if you get into the playoff, because this is a team that you should have beaten by 2 scores or more, and they didn't do it. They barely got by, and that's a problem. So they've really got to fine-tune a lot of things. Venables has got to get that defense locked down because you can't have teams running the ball on you the way UCF did. And basically, they have got to turn this around quickly before they get to that latter part of the season when you're talking about conference championship and, of course, college football playoff.
Well, we saw the same sort of thing out of Texas after the Red River rivalry game. Mm-hmm. Both teams had the bye week. I think the bye week came at a good time for them, but both schools needed to be far more awake than they were yesterday. I just think they just came into these games thinking that it's going to be a piece of cake. And the college football landscape is no longer a piece of cake.
No.
Yeah, you can no longer just throw your helmet out in the field and win by 20 points. You have to now show and prove week in and week out. Man, we flew through those first two games. Before we take our break, I want to throw a curveball, but I definitely want to get you guys' opinion. Obviously, Greg being a veteran, a fan of college football, and then Jeff obviously coaching at a high school level and being a former football player as well. This alleged Michigan controversy with the stealing signals. I mean, yes, I'm a Michigan fan, but even if I wasn't a Michigan fan, I think it's much ado about nothing. The reason why I say that is because if I'm the opponent, I got to do something to curtail that, meaning I got to switch things up. If my offensive lineman, for example, audibles on the line, if my O-lineman is always shouting out, I don't know, T-Bird, and that means pass play, after 2 or 3 seasons, the defense is going to know, hey, when they say T-Bird, it's a pass play. You got to switch it up. Maybe T-Bird's a run to the left or it's a draw to keep them on their heels and keep them honest. There's things you can do as far as like those giant cards where people have different kind of plays in the sidelines. I think that as an opponent, you got to do whatever you need to do to make sure that if this is happening, it's going to be really hard for the other team to use it to their advantage. Because I find it hard to believe that if this is true with Michigan, it's not happening everywhere else. Michigan just happened to be dumb enough or greedy enough to get caught if this proves to be true. And whenever you suspend a guy, when the investigation's still going on, I kind of feel like that might be Michigan trying to do some kind of preventive maintenance, hoping to get a softer penalty because they showed that they took the high road and took action as soon as they found out this was going on. I'll start with Greg, and I want to get Jeff's thoughts on this.
Well, you know my feelings about that school up north. I want them to be given the SMU death penalty. That's it. Done. We're history. I don't want to hear from that place called Ann Arbor for 10 years. But anyhow, Harbaugh is, if he did this just shows his NFL mentality. It's the Patriots. It really is. It's the Patriots stuff all over again. But there is a rule in the NCAA books that you cannot go out and do this stuff. I'm sorry. Well, the other thing that should happen to prevent all this nonsense is, guess what, kids? You got the mics in the ears of a quarterback in the NFL and into your middle linebacker or your safety as a green dot on defense. That's what you need to do to prevent all this nonsense.
What say you, Jeff?
Yeah, it's partially, is the NCAA still being a little behind the times on certain things, right? The NFL does have the headsets with the radio to the quarterback. We don't have it at the high school and college level. That's not allowed by regulation. So you have all these ingenious different ways they come up with signals. It's the 50 million hand signals. There's 3 guys on the sideline doing hand signals, right? Looking like traffic controllers. It's the cards that everybody's holding up with colors and shades blocking out. So we have all these simple things. As an offensive coordinator with no headset, and I coach grown men, okay, I was able to go and call to my quarterback at the hash marks exactly off the wrist coach what I wanted. And we had different colors, different names, different numbers. And I had 3 or 4 different calls for one play on that call sheet.
Exactly.
And if you couldn't mix it up and people couldn't catch your symbols with that, what is all this extra stuff? All right. So there's always going to be a level of gamesmanship when it comes to signals and audibles and stuff like that. Okay, when you're at the line, you're darn right that defense is listening to what you're calling, right? Even with special teams, when you have coaches that are telling kickers where to kick, some guys stand in the spot and say, look at where I'm at. That's where you're kicking to. I'm your landmark. Teams catch that too. So we're always looking when it comes to, okay, what are they doing? Is there a certain signal we can catch that we can figure it out? Is there a certain way they're lining up that we can figure out exactly how they're cheating to a certain play? There's always a tendency, whether it's something that the coaches are saying or doing, whether it's a call, whether it's a formation, whether it's certain thing that are certain players doing. That's part of the gamesmanship. Now, when you go a little extra by recording certain things, just that, like the Patriots did, recording hand signals so you can study the hand signals, that's a little bit extra. Okay, so what Michigan's accused of doing is a bit extra. Okay, and somebody's got to get their butt kicked for that, because sometimes you do go a little overboard on trying to get it. You're smothering people right now. You really are. And I get it. You want to keep that edge. But if you're doing it with stuff like this, then, yeah, somebody's got to get called out on it. There's a fine line between gamesmanship and cheating. Sometimes guys step over that line with 1 foot. Some guys go both feet over, in the case of Patriots. So, honestly, I don't say there's not much to do about nothing. Listen, they probably did step over the line. Somebody does have to be held accountable for it, whether it's Harbaugh, whether it's a specific assistant whose idea it was. The 10-1 is going to come back on Harbaugh because, like the captain of the ship, you're the head coach. It's your program. You let it happen on your watch. So he's probably going to get a bit of a smack on the hand too. But there has to be a point where you kind of curtail it and say, guys, listen, yes, there is gamesmanship, but there's also sportsmanship. You can't go out there and cheat your way into stealing signs and doing all that stuff. Stuff's going to happen. People are going to hear audibles at the line of scrimmage. Some people know what kill means, and some people don't. Depends on the offense, right? You go to the line and say kill, and every time you do it, it's a pass. Guess what? We know what's going on, okay? So that's why Peyton Manning got smart and started using Omaha in 50 million different situations. So you didn't know when it was real or not. So there's a big difference between certain things and certain gamesmanship. But once again, if they stepped over the line, yes, they deserve it.
Yeah, I mean, I had a solution that I was suggesting when I was at work and got blasted by one of my coworkers who actually coaches his son's high school football. So why don't you do a huddle? And he just gave me read me the riot act on how huddles would just kill tempo, and football today is all about tempo. So having to do a huddle every single time defeats the purpose. So it was like, how dare I suggest a huddle would be the way to curtail all this? But I mean, it is. You have old school. The receiver gets to play, runs it into the offense. You get into a huddle, call the play, and keep it moving. I like to think you can still have a huddle and have tempo. Maybe I'm wrong.
I'm a guy that does, when I'm an OC, I do have a huddle as my primary offense. I go no huddle. I go tempo. I go fast, especially when you're going, as we call it, NASCAR 2-minute, right? So there's ways to do things, right? You can still huddle and still do all that stuff. But the same thing you're doing when they're in the huddle, okay, realistically, huddles now are more for tempo of the game. You're trying to slow the game down.
Yeah.
Right? So when I'm calling the play normally, I'm calling it to the quarterback, and he's reading it off the wrist coach and going into the huddle and telling the guys what we want. But when we go no huddle, they're coming to the line, and we can go slow at the line of scrimmage. I can tell them the formation, they line up. We give them a fake cadence. They stop and do whatever all the college teams do. They're really doing the same thing anyway, right? They're coming to the line. They're lining up. They're giving a fake cadence. They stop and look at the sideline and get the real call. Yeah. Because the coordinators now are saying, well, I don't have to guess what this defensive coordinator is going to do. I can line up in a formation, get a look, and now call my play. So realistically, using a huddle or not, all they're doing is cheating the process and saying, I'm not relying on my game plan to call my plays. I'm relying on what I'm seeing from this defense to attack them. But, what happens in those situations is because you're putting all these calls out there now, right?
Yeah.
Defenses are picking up on it as the game goes along. Okay, yeah. Check. They call Nebraska. Okay, so Nebraska is this kind of combination on the outside. It's pass. All right, we're going to cut our coverage this way. We're going to mix our rush this way. And all of a sudden now that defensive coordinator is doing the same thing the offensive coordinator is doing. They're both calling plays at the line of scrimmage. So while you're adjusting to what he's showing you initially, he's adjusting to what he thinks you're doing at the line of scrimmage. So once again, the gamesmanship now happens at the line of scrimmage even more than it does pre-snap when they're both huddled up, calling signals into the huddle. So it's a little bit different. It's a little more of what you're seeing is a little more gamesmanship at the line of scrimmage. But at the end of the day, it's still a chess match. You still got to guess right. You still got to put your players in the right position. man, and you still got to make the right call, and they got to execute.
Yeah, no, without a doubt. Definitely want to talk about that.
And if Michigan's been doing this for as many years as they've been saying that it's been going on now, it hasn't helped them when they move south come January. It hasn't. It just hasn't helped them. So why are you doing this against schools like Eastern Michigan on your schedule and Delaware's and all these nobodies? What sense does this make?
Yeah, as much hard time as I give Georgia for having the softest schedule I've ever seen in the history of football, I think this year's Michigan Wolverines are a very close second behind them. So, I mean, I really can't talk too much. We still got 2 more games to go. You're watching The Last Word here on Team NBS Media. We'll be right back after this commercial break.
In 2006, we founded Yeti Coolers with a simple mission: build the cooler we use every day if it existed. One that was built for the serious outdoor enthusiasts rather than for mass discount retailers. One that could take the abuse we knew we'd put it through, out in the field and on the water. One that simply wouldn't break. We decided early on that production innovation would come from necessity and first-hand experience, not from market research and data analysis. Today, Yeti products perform when it matters most. Whether that be an excursion into the remote Alaskan wilderness, chasing redfish on the Gulf Coast, or just getting together with friends in the backyard, we make gear that helps you stay out longer, travel farther, and live harder. # built for the wild.
You are watching The Last Word with Team NBS Media. And now back to Joe, Jeff, and Brock.
Last Word presented to you by Team NBS Media. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the YouTube channel for some more exciting football content. 2 football games down, guys. 2 more to go. Let's talk about an interesting matchup that was under the lights in Tallahassee, talking about the Florida State Seminoles and the surprising Duke Blue Devils. We saw that Florida State was able to pull this game out, a 38-20 victory. Jeff, get your thoughts on this matchup.
Well, kudos to Florida State, right? This is a team that had to rope-a-dope this one kind of out, trailing. They were able to knock out Duke's quarterback, which kind of really changed that late part of the game, made us look a lot the gap looked a lot wider than it really was, right? Duke was able to move the football consistently for 3 quarters up until he went out. But Jordan Travis was resilient, played very well, continued to move the offense for the Noles, finally got them into the end zone more in the late 3rd and early 4th quarter when they were settling for field goals early. And Mike Norvell's done a great job with this program. We were talking about FSU, talking about them coming up last year. Well, now we're talking about them as contenders for a national title. Here's a guy that 2-3 years ago, people were going, well, he's a bust as a coach. Time to fire this guy and move on. Pay him and let him move on and get somebody in here that's going to get the job done. Well, he's gotten the job done. FSU is now a contender again, okay? Something they haven't said around these parts in quite a while since Jameis Winston was at the helm. So right now what you're looking at with this program is what can they do to finish out the ACC now? They're looking at it. They've gotten Duke out the way. They got to finish out this schedule and get themselves in contention for an ACC title, get that done, go in and put their hat in the ring undefeated for a playoff spot. That's what their goal is right now. So far, they're knocking down the dominoes. Some of them a little shaky, right? Some of those, you're not just knocking them down their fall. Some of them are like teetering, going, I'm not going down, right? This early in this game, Duke was that domino that wouldn't go down, okay? So they've got to start getting to the point where they're knocking all of these dominoes down. They're staying healthy. because that's one of the big keys here. Stay healthy. You don't want to get into that late part of the season to beat up team. That's where upsets happen. Okay, stay undefeated and get in the playoff, and you have the best chance of being a higher seed and drawing one of those teams that you can knock out in the first round.
Yeah, I think what impressed me the most about the Florida State performance, like you said, is the Florida State teams of old, when they get down like they did against Duke, would have just folded. They would have found some way to lose. And it happened more than once where you thought, man, Florida State's really starting to take advantage of this game. A fumble or interception, Duke scores. Okay, maybe Duke can really pull this off. And Florida State found something within themselves to kind of bring themselves back. And like you said, as soon as they injured the starting quarterback for Duke, it was kind of a wrap. But I just think about these past couple of 3-4 years of FSU teams, they wouldn't have came back after going down like that. Whether it was at home, on the road, they would have found a way to lose. So I was impressed with that. They just continue to march on towards a good season. What are your thoughts on this game, Greg?
Jordan Travis was phenomenal. He was just simply phenomenal. And when Riley Leonard got injured, that was it. That was the ball game. It was sad to see him go down the way that he did go down. But I'll tell you that Duke defense, they may be undersized, but man, they are absolutely tough. That little safety of theirs, 5'8", 165 pounds. He's just a little nightmare to deal with. And Florida State did not pass the ball very well in the first half at all. At all. I mean, they had 3 receptions to Johnny Wilson, and the kid from Michigan State had nothing. And you're just kind of watching this going, this is Duke? What? But again, once Leonard got injured, this game was over.
Yeah, I think for Duke, you can't lose hope in your season. I mean, obviously, you hope your quarterback can play the next game, but they've had a really solid season. You've definitely put Duke football on the map. You just hope those guys don't fold tent. I don't think they will either, than what they've played all season. They still have a chance to finish with a decent record. They'll be playing in a bowl game and kind of continue to build the Duke football program, which is what they're doing the last couple of years for sure. I was impressed, especially at Florida State and the way Florida State been playing this whole season. I was impressed the way Duke came out and gave them a really good fight. They punched them right in the mouth early.
Yeah.
Taking a look at another game. This is a game I really enjoyed to watch. We all know what happened last year when Tennessee beat Alabama, and the whole state of Tennessee celebrated for it seemed like a whole week. This time they had to go to Tuscaloosa and ended up leaving with an L as Alabama beats Tennessee 34-20. Man, a really, really fun game and a good post-game interview. And I'm a huge Nick Saban fan, and I just think that this season, more than any season recently, you're just seeing how good of a coach this guy really is and how he can get things right and make adjustments in season to get his team in position to accomplish their goals. What do you think about this game, Jeff?
I'll tell you what. This is a game with 2 quarterbacks we had a lot of questions about, right? Can Milton get it done now that Hendon Hooker's now in the NFL? Can Bama, now that they finally settle on a quarterback, can he come up to the level of play that Bama quarterbacks need to play at for them to win national titles? Neither one of these guys played great yesterday. Both of these guys made a lot of mistakes, missed a lot of open throws, but you saw less of that from Bama. You saw a consistent running game when you saw McClellan, not overwhelming stats, but quality numbers enough to help guide this offense enough. Much to the chagrin of many people that detract from him, Tommy Rees actually did a decent job calling up a game yesterday. He realized, listen, I got to run the football. No matter how many times, we run into a brick wall, sometimes running the football and just keeping it out there gives me more opportunity in the passing game. And he finally figured that part out. Usually at Notre Dame, he was very finesse. Well, yesterday he was ground and pound and grinding it out with those big boys inside the tackles. And you saw it. 27 carries, 115 yards, and a touchdown. Okay? McClellan, the explosive back, right, found ways to just grind out yardage. And the offense kept moving. And suddenly you look at it and go, well, Bama's a contender again. Because their offense is figuring out how to control the tempo of games. It's allowing their defense to play a lot more confident, get exposed a little bit less. Okay, so I think we're starting to also see Josh Heupel's team become Josh Heupel's team. Okay, when his teams are fast-paced and dictating the terms, they're a lot better. But when teams are able to play at their speed and they force Heupel in them to play their kind of game, this is what happens. So I think you're starting to see now teams are figuring out who Tennessee is and saying, we can't let this be one of those track meets where we're just out there on offense running back and forth, up and down the field. We dictate the pace. We make them play at our pace, and you see a different Tennessee team.
Greg?
It was two different ball games completely, though. The first half, Tennessee did exactly what Jeff was talking about. They dominated the pace of play. It was 20-7 at the half for Tennessee. And then in the second half, right from the get-go, and I put it into the chat, Tennessee's defense is sound asleep on those two plays because it took 2 plays for Alabama to score a touchdown to start the second half. 2 plays, that was it. And it was like, oh my God, something has hit the Volunteers, and they were nowhere in the second half. They were absolutely nowhere. I mean, to me, this is a 27-0 victory for Alabama in the second half of football. Bottom line, and credit Saban for getting his guys to wake up, because in that first half, they weren't there. They were not there at all.
Yeah, one thing about Alabama that still kind of worries me, and it's gotten better as the games and season has gone on, is that offensive line is still, compared to Alabama teams of old, the offensive line is not where it needs to be. But if you take a look at week 1 and see what they are yesterday, obviously you see improvement. But again, like I said, the coaching staff and the job that Saban does, I just feel like Nick Saban's kind of like Tom Izzo. You give him a group of guys, listen to what he says for 4 or 5 months, do exactly what he tells you to do, you're going to end up in a pretty good spot at the end of the season. You got to follow directions. I think that's exactly what he's doing with this Alabama team as they move on. And that post-game interview was pretty cool. It's cool to see Coach Saban lighten up a little bit and not just a tight ass all the time. That was like you probably never do it again for the rest of the season.
But if you watch Saban every week with McAfee, he is light. He is light with McAfee, right? Saban is a human being like the rest of us and all this other jazz. Everybody has this perception of Saban as being this hard ass a-hole 24/7. Nobody's going to be that way. Nobody. And Saban even has admitted his wife got him to finally smile on camera so that people would actually like him and things like that, because he didn't even realize that he was not doing those things. He was just being Saban, right? Well, I mean, he's a myth. He's a man, but he's a myth, right? The bottom line is the Alabama football team totally outclassed the Volunteers in that second half of the game, and that's good for them.
Yeah, we'll see they can pull some magic off, and somehow I still think it's a very complicated road. If they think they're going to be one of the Final Four teams, they got a lot's got to fall their way, and they got to take care of their own business. Yeah, but I think it's been an improvement, obviously, from week 1 to where they are now.
This road still goes through Georgia.
Yeah, exactly. And like I said, softest schedule in America, right behind, with Michigan right behind them. I don't know if they might not be ready for a big game, having not had one all. Well, you don't have, in my opinion, when you don't have a close call all season long, and then you finally get one, and it also happens to be on the biggest stage, there's a pretty good chance sometimes you might fold. I mean, you can say Heart of the Champion, and we prepared for this all season long. That's easy to say. It's a lot harder to do.
Ask the 18-0 Patriots what happened to them.
Exactly. For your first big test to be it's national championship or season's over, I mean, how are you going to react to that? I guess we'll find out.
Yeah.
Should have sprinkled in something on the road or something there, but Kirby Smart knows he's doing better than I do, I guess. Talking about college football playoff dreams being dashed, it wasn't just that. I'd say a Heisman Trophy campaign also ended last night. It was a great game. We saw Utah defeat USC on the road, 34-32. Man, this game had everything. Ups and downs, special teams plays. You had guys getting ejected, crying on the sidelines. We had Lincoln Riley for I don't know what time, was it the umpteenth time that he's told the media his players not available? Way to show your guys how to overcome adversity and fight back by hiding them from the media after a tough loss. We'll start with you, Jeff. USC, Utah, thoughts, sir?
Well, how about this? One of the biggest knocks on USC has been the defense. If it's not evident today that they need to make some major strides next season, this whole offseason on defense, I don't know what is. Utah has struggled this season to score points consistently. To go out there and get outscored by Utah says a lot about this defense. And yes, losing a young man to an ejection sucks. He's a key player on that defense. But he wasn't the reason why you lost, giving up 34 points. Did your Heisman candidate quarterback struggle a bit? Yeah, I mean, he didn't throw any touchdown passes. He still had a good game, right? You talk about it, 34-24, 256 yards. That's an efficient game. You should be able to do that. You should be able to win. You had 86 yards rushing from one of your running backs, okay? Well, it's just 7 carries, okay? You should be able to win this game. 32 points, enough to win this game. Not enough when you can't stop Utah. Utah has been consistently a struggling offense. We saw them lose scoring 7 points. We saw them win scoring 12 points and 17 points. There's no way that you give up double that unless your defense is really a problem. So I think we could talk about how great offensive coordinator Lincoln Riley is and how great a head coach he is. He's a very good head coach. He's an excellent offensive coordinator. But you want to be a championship head coach, you better fix this defense. You're not going to continue to outpoint people on a weekly basis. It's just not going to happen. It didn't happen when you were in the Big 12. It's not happening in the Pac-12. It's about time where he realizes, I need a defense to win. If that loss to Tulane in the bowl didn't tell you something, then this season should.
Yeah.
What about you, Greg? I know you enjoyed the game as much. We all did.
Well, I mean, Bryson Branch was just phenomenal at quarterback for the Utah Utes. This kid's a walk-on. He's not a 5-star or 4-star quarterback. And he went out and demolished USC on that final drive by himself. And then you got that other kid who's playing safety for them and who's also playing their running back now, Travis Hunter. Kyle Willingham just gets his kids to do what it takes year in and year out. This is what college football should be about, folks. It's not about prime time and all of his studs and all that other nonsense. You want to be a college football team, you want to be a Utah Ute. That team went out and destroyed any last vestige of hope of Caleb Williams repeating as the Heisman Trophy winner, which, of course, my boys did their number the week prior. It's over. And all this other nonsense talk about Caleb Williams wanting a part of an NFL team if he gets drafted by them. Sit down and shut the hell up, young man. Did you see him on that bench after the game?
Looked devastated to me.
Yeah. You know why he's devastated? Because he's not going to be an owner of an NFL team as a rookie quarterback. What
He
sort
wasn't
of
going to be one
nonsense
even
is
if
that?
he won the Heisman again.
Yeah.
What
That
sort
wasn't
of-
happening.
that is just total garbage. But if you wanted to play at a high level of football, and you want to have that team mentality that Jeff and I always talk about, you want to be a Utah Ute. That is the school to go to.
Well, I saw this morning before we went on the air. I think it was their brothers. I think it was Emmanuel Acho who suggested that now that the season is quote unquote over for USC, maybe the right business decision for Caleb Williams is to sit out the rest of the season to avoid injury and get ready for the NFL.
Oh, of course it is.
And I just feel like that's a horrible decision. If it was me, I would not make that decision. You're quitting on your team. I think you're also putting a little bit of doubt in NFL teams. Okay, now that he's professional, he's getting paid. If things get bad, I mean, look at Bryce Young. He's eating dirt week in and week out. still doing press conferences, still going to practice, still trying his best to get this Carolina Panthers team on the right path, is a guy who says, you know what, we're not going to the playoff. I'm not going to win the Heisman. I'm done. Is that the kind of guy we want to be the face of our franchise and the leader of our team? I mean, I'm not saying he still won't be a top 5 draft pick, because we know he will. This will be, if he decides to do this, it'd be the hot story for a week or two. But I think the bigger thing is just your teammates, the guys you were working out with in the summer, these last 2 years, 3 years with. You're just going to say, you know what, I can't get all the awards I wanted to get, so I'm done. I just think that'd be a really, really bad look for Caleb Williams.
Yep. Yeah, you can't do it. I mean, not everybody can pull the Joey Bosa, right? Where you just go out, all right, that's it, I'm good, right? You're going to have to come out, all right, and play again. Right now, he's not going to win the Heisman. There have been too many losses and ugly performances. The Notre Dame performance was ugly, and this one wasn't ugly, but it wasn't to the point where people are going to look at this and go, this is a bounce back for him. They may have lost, but this is a bounce back game. He played decent. He played efficient. You don't want to see a Heisman Trophy winner playing efficient. You want to see him playing lights out. So he's been surpassed. Now, he may not have been surpassed by Michael Penix, as we saw that performance, right? But he's been surpassed. So
he's been surpassed by there's 2 quarterbacks who are far ahead of Caleb Williams right now, and that's Drake May and Jordan Travis of FSU. That's
Absolutely. And at this point, he's got to come back and put together more tape that NFL teams are going to like. That's what it's about right now. I want to maintain my status as a first-round draft pick. Right now, I was QB1. That started to slip the last couple of weeks. You know, people are starting to throw the Mays in that QB1 conversation. They're starting to throw the Travises in that conversation, the Bo Nixes. Okay, so if that's the case, I want to solidify my money at QB1. I got to go back out there and start putting up 3 and 4 touchdowns a game again. This cannot go back to mediocre and solid performances. This has got to be the Caleb Williams that burst on the scene in Oklahoma and continue to do that at USC. This is what he has to do from now on. So he's got to get his film back out there, and he needs his teammates to help him. Because realistically, if you look at the performance yesterday, Caleb Williams wasn't the problem. Okay?
Yeah.
All this talent that supposedly is on the offense with him at USC, other than 1 or 2 guys, it didn't show up, right?
Yep.
They weren't getting open to the point where he's making these great throws.
But there's my point about Utah again, though, Jeff. Yeah. Because that Utah Utes defense shut those guys down.
Absolutely.
Shut them down.
If you learned anything yesterday, you learned that Utah's defense is a lot better than you thought was before kickoff. Like, as somebody who had never seen them play this season, I think I saw like a half, and it was like the second week of the season with Utah. I learned that defense is legit because, like you said, you got 5- and 4-star recruits that have all the highlights on social media that didn't do a damn thing yesterday because the defense shut them down.
Yeah. And that's been their calling card all season. We talked about the offense wasn't exactly a juggernaut all season. Okay, Bryson Barnes was a revelation yesterday because they sure as hell haven't had that kind of performance all year at quarterback. So this has been something that they needed. Is because everybody was saying, wait till they get their quarterback back. Wait till they get their quarterback back. Well, now you don't have to wait. You've already proven one guy on your roster besides your quarterback that's still out can get the job done. But can he do it on a weekly basis? Because you're not going to see USC's defense every week because we've been ripping this defense for I can't count how many weeks.
Look what happened against the UCLA defense to Utah, right?
Yes.
14-7 loss. Right,
absolutely.
So,
and UCLA is a pretty, bipolar offense. We've seen Brian Kelly's offense light it up one week, and then we see them go anemic the next. So, it's one of those where you're looking at it and going, well, okay, what are we getting this week from this team? Well, Utah, the one thing that's been consistent has been their defense. Their offense, on the other hand, up until yesterday, you were wondering how they were going to beat USC. Well, somehow they pulled out an offense that looked amazing.
Yeah, that final drive was awesome. The final drive for the game-winning field goal was just textbook, and to have the walk-on who just became on scholarship, I think I heard earlier this year, to have him be the guy that was basically the backbreaker, that scramble, staying in bounds, and then them getting the ball to the middle of the hash. set things up for an easy game-winning field goal. Just a class on how to win a game yesterday by Utah. How to shut down a flashy offense. Definitely a big W for them.
Yeah.
Now, I didn't come prepared with my homework this week, but Jeff and Greg did. It is time, ladies and gentlemen, for the statement. Week.
You were muted, Joe. We couldn't hear you.
So who wants to go? Who would like to go first this week?
Well, I'll go first. You know, since I'm the only regular since Brock is here this week. So, listen, we just talked about it. Okay. The statement for me was Utah. Okay. We're going to find a way to continue to win this Pac-12 title. They went out there 34 points on USC's defense. We hadn't seen this kind of capability from Utah all season long. They found a way. Even though they gave up 30-plus points, their defense, normally stout, doesn't give up 30 points on a regular. They gave up 30-plus points to USC, still found a way to win. To me, they are one of the most resilient programs in college football. Every year, we go out there and go, how is Utah doing this? They don't have the number one draft pick at quarterback. They haven't had one since Alex Smith, okay? So this is a team that constantly goes out there with mostly in-state prospects. They do get a lot of West Coast prospects, but for the most part, they recruit well in-state, and then they recruit well in the region, okay? And they find a way to go out there and consistently win games in the Pac-12. Give credit to Utah for saying we're still a contender for the Pac-12 title.
And for you, Greg, this week?
For me this week, I really don't understand what the hell happened to the North Carolina Tar Heels. I really don't. I just don't get this. Virginia was 1-5. And they come up with some sort of miracle to upset the Tar Heels. And Mac Brown, I feel bad for Mac because he should have really been going unbeaten into that ACC title game in order to have a shot at the playoff. Even if they lose that one game and they end up beating Florida State in that playoff, if it's Florida State, I don't think that the voters would get Mac Brown into the playoff that way. So, unfortunately, for the Tar Heels, the CFB playoff picture is out of the picture as far as I'm concerned now.
I think the one thing that I'm thinking about as we're doing the show that has me excited is how much more exciting, as if that's even possible, the college football season is going to be when they expand the playoff. I mean, think about all these teams that were like, man, they lost that one game. That's it. They lost that one game. That's it. And I mean, of course, if it's an ugly, bad loss, there's no way in hell you're going to get into the playoff. But think about the team that just had a bad day at the office, whether it be a star player gets injured or a play that didn't break for them here or there. Once they expand, this thing's going to be awesome. I mean, it's going to be really, really fun.
And it's going to be ugly for a team like an Alabama who would be a lower seed having to come up north and play a game at that time of the year. That's what I want to see happen. I want to see those big boys from the SEC and their warm weather nonsense. You come up north, baby. You come up north and you play in Ohio State in Columbus at the Shoe or at the Big House, your favorite prison. Well, that's what the Big House was. But you guys love to call it the Big House or up to Notre Dame and touchdown Jesus. You big boys, you get to come up there, you're going to get your asses kicked. The same way.
That's a good point. I can't see like a Florida State playing at Ohio State and like being,
I mean, it's
life-changing weather up there.
It's going to be a fairer system.
Yeah, and then you're also going to have those Cinderella teams that slide in there that might pull something off.
Yeah, exactly.
And you know what colleges love most about that? The money. We get the extra gate. It's Christmas for those guys, right? The programs get an extra gate. They that's Christmas in December, but a few weeks earlier. Give them credit. They found another way to make even more money off of this. I don't know how they couldn't make any more money off of this. Expanding the playoffs, letting the teams host instead of throwing it into those,
garbage days,
karaoke.com, bowl games.
Hey, Russ bowl game fanatics. We want our bowl games. Thank you.
Hey, listen, much. I love all the bowl games. I love bowl season, but people tend not to watch it when it's 6-6 Western Michigan versus such and such and such. Now, if you're making that a playoff game, people are excited about it. So that was always my thing. If you're going to expand the bowl system, expand it into those smaller bowls that are like the week before Christmas that only the hardliners watch. That'll boost those ratings a lot. But people still love their Idaho potato bowls.
Yeah, give me my Cheez-Its bowl, man. I want to see the coach. I want to see the coach take a bath.
I'll never knock the Cheez-Its bowl. That's down here in Orlando.
Duke's Mayo Bowl. Come on, man. My time of year right there. I love it.
Up at 2 a.m.
Fight to stay awake.
Sid needs a Bahamas Bowl. That's where I want to go.
I think I just saw it's the Los Angeles Bowl presented by Gronk is the name of it now.
Yeah. Yep.
Why not? Jimmy Kimmel's got his, right?
Jimmy Kimmel has his. That's right. Yeah. So why can't Gronkowski too?
Oh my gosh!
Yeah, by all means, I volunteer. They can send me to the Bahamas Bowl anytime.
Yep.
Well, as always, man, another great show, guys. I want to thank you guys so much. Like I said before, don't forget to like and subscribe. You've been watching The Last Word of Team NBS Media. I'm Joe Cardoza, joined by Jeff Barnes and our 5-star recruit, Mr. Greg Rector. We'll catch you guys next week. And make sure you stay tuned with us because coming up next is going to be Moving the Chains as we get you ready for NFL Sunday.